far out in the Indian Ocean, scattered across turquoise water, lies one of Africa's most unusual countries, Seychelles. It is not a single island, but an archipelago of 115 islands, positioned about 1,500 kilometers east of mainland Africa. Its capital and largest city, Victoria, sits on Mahé, the country's main island. On a map, Seychelles can look almost too small to matter. But its location has placed it in the path of ocean trade, empire, migration, tourism, and modern geopolitics. It is the smallest country in Africa by land area, and also the least populated sovereign African state, with a population estimated at around 100,600 in 2022. Yet despite that size, Seychelles has achieved some of the continent's strongest development indicators, making it a fascinating example of how geography can both limit and empower a nation. Seychelles' geography is central to understanding the country. Its islands are spread across a large area of the western Indian Ocean, near other island states and territories such as the Maldives, Comoros, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mayotte, Réunion, and the Chagos Archipelago. This position makes Seychelles feel remote, but not isolated. Historically, the Indian Ocean connected East Africa, Arabia, India, and Southeast Asia through trade routes long before European empires arrived. Arab and Swahili sailors likely knew of the islands, but there is no evidence of permanent settlement before external contact intensified. In other words, Seychelles did not begin as a densely inhabited civilization displaced by colonization. Instead, its society was largely created through migration, empire, forced labor, and later global economic transformation. Before sustained European involvement, the islands appear to have been uninhabited. That made Seychelles different from many other African territories, where colonial powers imposed themselves on long-established kingdoms, villages, and political systems. Europeans first recorded the islands in the 16th century, during the age of ocean exploration and expanding maritime empires. But recording the islands was not the same as settling them. For a long time, they remained mostly untouched by permanent European settlement. Their value came from location. They could serve as stopping points, strategic outposts, or potential plantation colonies. This set the stage for a later period when European powers began turning ocean spaces into controlled imperial networks. France formally claimed Seychelles in the 18th century, bringing the islands into the wider French colonial world of the Indian Ocean. Like other plantation societies, the colonial economy depended heavily on coerced labor. Enslaved Africans were brought to Seychelles, many of them already captured through existing African, Arab, and Indian Ocean slave trade networks. They were forced to work on plantations and became central to the formation of the island's population and culture. This history matters because Seychelles' beauty can sometimes hide the violence behind its early colonial development. The postcard image of beaches and palm trees is real, but so is the history of displacement, slavery, and labor exploitation that helped build the society that exists today. Seychelles then became part of a broader imperial rivalry between France and Britain. Control over islands in the Indian Ocean was not only about land, it was about sea lanes, military reach, and commercial influence. In the early 19th century, Seychelles came under full British control. British rule brought administrative changes and eventually the abolition of slavery. But abolition did not instantly create economic equality. Plantation systems still needed labor, and in many colonies, slavery was replaced partly by indentured labor. In Seychelles, laborers from India became part of this new system, adding another layer to the country's demographic and cultural mix. The result was a society shaped by African, European, and Asian histories meeting in a small island environment. The cultural identity of Seychelles is one of its defining features. Seychellois society reflects French, British, Indian, and African influences, with Chinese elements also present. This mixture can be seen in language, food, religion, family names, architecture, and everyday customs. The official name exists in French as République de Seychelles and in Seychellois Creole as République Cecil, showing how colonial language and local identity coexist. Seychellois Creole is especially important because it represents the creation of a shared identity among people from different origins, particularly descendants of enslaved Africans and other migrants. Rather than being a simple blend, Seychellois culture is the result of generations adapting, surviving, and building a common society from very different historical experiences. Seychelles became independent from the United Kingdom in 1976. At independence, it was still a small island country with an economy that had long depended on agriculture and limited exports. Small island states face challenges that larger countries often do not: limited land, smaller labor markets, vulnerability to imported goods, and exposure to global shocks. But Seychelles also had advantages. Its natural environment, location, and political stability gave it opportunities in services and tourism. Over time, the country moved away from being mainly agricultural and developed a more diversified market-based economy, with major roles for tourism, the public sector, and other service activities. This transformation became one of the most important stories in modern Seychelles. Tourism is central to how Seychelles is known internationally. The country's beaches, coral waters, granite islands, and tropical biodiversity make it one of the world's most recognizable luxury destinations. But tourism is not just about visitors taking vacations. It shapes employment, infrastructure, foreign exchange, and the country's global image. For a small island nation, tourism can bring wealth quickly, but it also creates dependency. A downturn in global travel, a pandemic, or environmental damage can have major consequences. Seychelles' challenge has been to use tourism as an engine of development while avoiding the risks of relying too heavily on one industry. That balance is especially important in a country with a small population and limited domestic market. Economically, Seychelles stands out in Africa. From 1976 to 2015, its nominal GDP grew by nearly 700%, while purchasing power parity increased by nearly 1,600%. These figures point to a dramatic shift from a small post-colonial economy into a higher-income island state. In the early 21st century, Seychelles had the highest nominal GDP per capita of any African country. It also ranked highest in Africa on the Human Development Index, a measure that includes income, education, and life expectancy. These achievements do not mean Seychelles has no inequality or vulnerability. But they show that small size does not automatically mean weak development. In Seychelles' case, careful use of tourism, services, public administration, and international engagement helped create unusually strong outcomes for the continent. In the late 2010s, Seychelles also took steps to encourage more foreign investment. For a small island economy, foreign capital can help expand hotels, infrastructure, financial services, and other sectors. But it must be managed carefully. Too much dependence on outside investors can raise concerns about land ownership, environmental protection, debt, and whether profits remain inside the country. Seychelles' development model therefore involves a constant balancing act, attracting money and expertise while preserving sovereignty and protecting the natural environment that makes the country valuable in the first place. This is one reason small island nations often have complex economic strategies despite their modest size. They must compete globally while guarding what cannot be replaced. Seychelles is also notable for its political rankings. According to the 2024 VDEM Democracy Indices, Seychelles was ranked as the 43rd electoral democracy worldwide, the top-ranked liberal democracy in Africa, and the second-ranked electoral democracy on the continent. These rankings matter because they complicate common assumptions about African politics. Seychelles is not powerful in military or population terms, but it has built institutions that are recognized internationally. Its democratic reputation adds to its diplomatic credibility, especially in organizations such as the United Nations, the African Union, the Southern African Development Community, and the Commonwealth of Nations. Membership in these bodies gives Seychelles a voice beyond what its size might suggest. The story of Seychelles is ultimately a story of scale. It is tiny in population, spread across islands, and far from the African mainland. Yet it sits at the crossroads of Indian Ocean history, shaped by slavery, colonial rivalry, migration, independence, tourism, and modern development. Its society reflects African, European, Indian, and Chinese influences, while its economy shows how a small nation can build prosperity through services and global connection. At the same time, Seychelles faces the classic pressures of island states: environmental vulnerability, dependence on outside markets, and the need to protect a fragile natural heritage. Seychelles may be Africa's smallest country, but its history and modern success make it far larger in significance than its map size suggests. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.